Hi. I think my name is Bandile Mathandela, and as you rightfully said there, I am an entrepreneur as well as a strategy consultant with a sort of a focus on SME development, FMCG, as well as investments. So yeah, I think that's me. I live in Joburg, originally from Cape. Currently the Chief Operating Officer of Aurum Innova, which sort of plays in the healthcare space and has been quite involved with regards to COVID-19. Have been sort of operating as CEO and will be beginning my reign on the 1st of July. So that's who I am in a bit of a summary. I have experience in various number of sectors. FMCG, we ran a cold pressed juice company for about 2 years. One Juice, I don't know if you guys know it. We basically started One Juice on the back of a kitchen and now is sold across 100 stores across the country. A bit of experience in investments, just facilitating investments across Sub-Saharan Africa. Did a lot of work in SME development in Rwanda, as well as Madagascar. And in Madagascar, the idea was sort of to try and find ways in which we can improve access to finance for women-owned SMEs. What they were finding in their research is that women-led SMEs seldom get finance. So we just sort of unpacked the entrepreneurship value chain in that country. Similarly, in Rwanda, President Kagame had a goal of creating what is called mass entrepreneurship, which is basically creating entrepreneurship at a mass scale. And the idea is not to build big businesses, but rather taking the approach of building a lot of small businesses, which I think in South Africa, we try and help a company grow and become big. So Rwanda took a different approach in how they approach entrepreneurship. I think it would be difficult to say it's an attitude. I think there's definitely certain attitudes or attributes that you may have that can contribute in making you a better entrepreneur. But I don't know if you can say entrepreneurship on its own is an attribute, you know. And I think that we must sort of steer away from boxing entrepreneurship in any way or trying to define it within the confines of what we use to confine roles in corporate. Entrepreneurship is a fluid lifestyle or life choice that you've made. And hence you find that entrepreneurs are generally risk takers and people who are always trying the next idea and trying to innovate the next idea. They never settle in one business. Even in one business, you'll find that business will continue to transition and transcend. And you look at Facebook. Facebook is not what it was originally started to be. A couple of years back, we had BlackBerry, which was also originally designed to do something different. So entrepreneurship is fluid. So I just want to steer away from this thing of making entrepreneurship rigid and trying to define it and contain it into certain parameters. So I think if you wanted to be technical, it's just certain motivation, because ultimately as an entrepreneur, you become the MD or the director of the company, and that's your title. And I also think that it's important as an entrepreneur to always separate yourself from your business. I think the reason the question is it an occupation or is it an attribute, is because the sort of looking at your business and an entrepreneur as one person. It's not. Your business as an entrepreneur employs you as an entrepreneur. It's a separate entity altogether, and you must steer away from marrying them the two, because what then happens is businesses never grow because they attached to you. You know, your business needs to be so in a way it's an occupation because but you do need certain attitudes and attributes that can make it. Yeah, I think the key to what you said is that word is one of the words that you used, the planning. You know, I don't think that we plan enough. I think that we take a business plan as a mere document that you need to submit to in order to get funding. A business plan is more than just a document for funding purposes. A business plan is where you get to really understand your business, to really understand, is this a viable market? You know, it's not enough to say, I'm going to sell alcohol. There's enough people selling alcohol in the country, therefore it will sell. doesn't work like that. You need to conduct research. When it comes to your business, you have to be as minute as possible. You have to go to the details about every single thing, particularly in the initial phase, because you don't have enough money to employ professionals yet. So you're going to have to be the accountant of the company. You're going to have to be the marketer of the company. You're going to have to be the HR of the company. So you need to make sure that you plan so well in advance that it's very easy to then run the business when hard time comes. So research, I'm a huge fan of research, particularly the industry in which you are going to operate. What I sometimes find when I speak to small entrepreneurs, particularly the youth, they don't know enough about their industry. They assume a lot of things. They think a lot of things work in a certain way. And what I want to question is how we view life as a normal citizen is not how you should view life as an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, there's no purpose in complaining about societal problems. As an entrepreneur, you're supposed to find solutions to those problems, right? So essentially what I'm saying is that how do you become successful? You need to plan better. You need to research better. You need to make sure that your business is solution oriented. If you are not solving a solution, it's only a matter of time before your business closes down. If you cannot answer what solution you are giving, it means there's only a matter of time before we realize that there's no need for you. So it might be successful because there's still hype and you just started it. But unless you're addressing a need, your business is not going to be sustainable. So I think that one of the biggest things that you young entrepreneurs need to do is invest upfront in learning, in research, in planning, and in actually doing a business plan for themselves, not necessarily for just an investor. And more than anything, to just, I think beyond the planning and beyond all of that is to also just do, and just get with it. But I think for me, the main thing is research, planning, understand your industry, understand the value chains, understand the soft skills. There's the technical part and then there's the soft part. For example, if you want to get into the alcohol industry in South Africa or the juice industry, the beverage industry, there are so many industry gatekeepers that if you don't understand that dynamics of that industry itself, you might make mistakes early on and never even getting on. So you need to make sure that you set yourself up in the beginning for that industry, and you can only do that through research. People skills. I think South African youth and in fact South African citizens struggle with people skills, struggle with communication. You see it on social media day in, day out. People post things, you challenge them on their opinion and they say, Oksala. People can't substantiate the points they're trying to make. They can't communicate the points. You see it in corporate. I see it with my interns, and you can pick it up. You can almost pick it up. This is because of social media. They're so used to not ever communicating and not ever defending your point and not ever engaging people that they haven't learned the skill. And I think this is a critical skill when you're going into business, because ultimately business is just management of people. That's all you're doing. You're managing that stakeholder to make sure that they deliver on time. You're managing your client to make sure that they're happy. You're managing your employee to make sure that they do what they do. That's all business is, stakeholder management and communication. So if you can't communicate, it will be very, very difficult for you to run a business. Even you can be the most skillful human being. You could be able to design the best car in the world. If you can't sell it to me, I'm not buying it. Doesn't matter what you've designed. People buy what you sell. So stakeholder engagement, communication for me is one of the biggest skills you can learn in business. If you are good at stakeholder management and communication and people skills, then you can appoint an accountant. You can appoint an auditor. You can appoint a marketer. You can appoint these people that have these expert skills that are needed to be. But how do you do that? By making sure that you manage them in such a way that they don't, so people management and communication for me is one of the biggest things that entrepreneurs need. Because, if you know how to speak for yourself, you can get yourself that right. If you know how to speak yourself, you can get yourself whatever you need to make your business successful. So I think youth in South Africa, and I think the education system definitely is looking at this, particularly in primary schools and in high schools. And that's one of the things that actually they're doing in Rwanda. In Rwanda, they interfere at grade 7. So one of the things we did in Rwanda is to look at what age and what stage in life do you need to interfere in order to create a better entrepreneur, because you need to start equipping them with skills that will make them better. And our research told us that you need to intercept at the ages of between 12 and 18, which coincided with grade 7 at that time. And one of the skills that were needed the most was around communication. Recent studies in South Africa have actually found that 50%, I think 40% of youth fail because of fear of failure. Meaning that, and I think if you're able to communicate, that fear lessens there, because you know that, okay, I can take myself out of that position. I can negotiate myself out of that deal. I can get myself involved in that contract. And I think the lack of communication skills then sort of augments the fear, and you start thinking to yourself, what am I even going to say? People who can communicate are not afraid of getting or taking risks because they believe that they can communicate their way out. So I would say that the youth in South Africa needs to learn how to communicate, and there's a responsibility from the department, from the government, there's a responsibility from parents, there's a responsibility from all of us to start teaching the youth, particularly, and the youth, we must not fear stretching as far back as 12 years old. It doesn't start at 18 when people have responsibility. It starts at 12, and of course you teach them communication skills in various ways. It doesn't have to be in an entrepreneurship context, but you want people to get used to talking, to presenting their points, to arguing. You see, for example, when my brother wants something, he must argue the point. Why do you want it? How is it going to contribute? Obviously, you're not going to be pedantic and do that with everything. Otherwise, now they won't like you much. But I think communication is extremely important in order to succeed. So there's a huge debate currently happening in South Africa now within the small business space, where a company is a legal entity in its own right and should be viewed as a legal entity. But now what financial institutions are doing is they're looking at that legal entity, but then they're looking at the entrepreneur to provide some form of collateral for that company. But now that entrepreneur is a youth who doesn't have a good credit record, which means now that youth will never be able to access finance, which means no matter how good that idea of that person has, it will never take off merely because of the credit record issue. Now, that's happening at a regulatory point of view, where there's arguments being put forward that because a company is a legal entity, funding should only be based on future potential earnings, because essentially you're making an investment in an idea and you're backing this entrepreneur to succeed. So if you're already assessing him in his current credit record, and you're basically setting him up to fail to begin with. So there's that aspect, and then there's the aspect of as a personal the personal aspect as a youth. How do you get yourself out of that situation? And I think one of the biggest misconceptions around credit record is amounts. Amounts have nothing to do with the credit record. Yes, they are considered, of course, how much do you owe, but credit records are more around behavior. So if you find yourself in a situation where you have a bad credit record, you need to find a way to demonstrate that you now have the behavior that is able to service debt. All credit records tell us is it gives us a score that your score indicates what your behavior is towards debt. So even if you were to miss 3 months and then on the 3rd month you pay off the entire amount, your credit record would still be bad because your behavior in servicing your debt is not consistent, and therefore you are a risk to the financial institution. So essentially what you need to always manage is the behavior. So even if you have to pay 5,000 Rand a month and you don't have 5,000 Rand a month this month, you've got 500 Rand. Engage your creditor and pay them that 500 Rand because it indicates the behavior and the willingness to service your debt, and thus doesn't affect your credit record. So it's not an amount thing, and we must detach ourselves completely to this amount thing. In fact, some of the things you can do, and I'm just giving a random point, and I know it's not part of the question, is one of the things I've done with my younger siblings. When they turn 16, I open a bank account for them, and I open a credit account for them, a clothing credit account for them. Their uniform is bought on credit in January, and then the amount that was supposed to pay for that uniform, I deposited into their account, set up a debit order so that they pay it off over 6 months. So I've set up a system that is helping their credit record. By the time he's 18, he's 21, he's got such a good credit record that Your child is getting an interest rate of 15%, he's getting an interest rate of 7%, because for the past 3 years of his life, he's been servicing debt. So I think we need to get ourselves in that habit. 18-year-olds, as parents, is sometimes let them buy something on credit and then help them pay it off over 2 months. It helps their credit records. So what should young people with bad credit records do? One, pray that the regulations are changed. Two, get into a proper behavior. Get a small credit facility. Get the behavior up and going again. Even if you're paying 50 Rand a month, just get the behavior going again. Unfortunately, there's nothing you can do. Once you are blacklisted, you could complain to the end of the world. You still won't access finance. You just need to make sure that you change that situation in order. Ultimately, what you need to do is you need to know how your business is going to work. You need to know the market you are going to operate in. You need to know how much money you are going to need to run that business. You need to know when you are going to start making money. You need to know when you are going to start making a profit. Because remember, making money and making a profit are two different things. A lot of businesses are making money, but they're not making a profit. Some of them are making a profit, but they're not making money. So it's a conversation around cash versus profit. But be that as may, I think we must not get caught up in the semantics, Hillman. I think the important thing is just outline a plan, whether it becomes a business model, a business plan, or it's classified as whatever. It honestly doesn't. It's immaterial once you start. Trust me. Once you are there and there's a supply in front of you, the business plan or business model is not going to matter. The projections are not going to matter. It's that person in front of you. The business plan is more for you to guide you, so that when things are not going to plan, you can go back to your plan and say, okay, I projected to be here at this time, and this was the reason for my projections. This is the reason why it didn't happen. Do I need to readjust my projections, and do I need to readjust my market? Or I initially said that I was going to target the students, but now I've realized that people who want my product are actually graduates who are working. So now I need to readjust my plan. And keep your plan fluid. It's not a rigid plan. It's not something that's going to be like that forever. As soon as you find out more information, change your plan. I know social media keeps digging up posts of the past and people are not allowed to change their minds. But in the real world, you have to change your mind. As soon as you find out more information, change your mind immediately. Because delayed decisions in business are costly. Listen, if you are in serious debt and your business has failed and you are in a position where you're in a very hard position, maybe you need to consider employment. Maybe you need to do, you must just consider whatever you can on your side. It's a very individual question. I think it would be irresponsible for me to say, give up, don't give up. I think analyze your situation yourself. But yeah, the reality though is that, remember, when you give up, you don't give up because you're going to sit down and not do anything. You give up because you're going to try and find another way in which to make money, because no one's going to come save you. No one's going to say, oh, you tried and you failed, therefore you're going to have to find the strength to do something again yourself. So ultimately, you're going to have to still keep moving. But whether you pursue the same idea, whether you change the idea, whether you start another business, that's going to be an extremely personal question. And I think do what feels right, trust yourself. Oftentimes we know what we need to do. It's just hesitation and doubt that makes us not do it. Don't grow too quick. When things start going well, when you start seeing revenue, when you start seeing success, when you start seeing things going, I always say grow strong and not necessarily big. Big things become obese and they become immobile, and you don't want your business to be obese and immobile. What do I mean? So I'll share a personal story. Fortunately for me, I was able to navigate myself out of this situation. I started a shuttle company in 2017. I basically went into Uber and was able to change that into a shuttle service company. The company was doing very well. I was getting a lot of jobs and I was getting a lot of trips. I was making a lot of money. And naturally, what do you do as an entrepreneur when you make money? You want to grow. So I started buying more cars. And in a space of 2 years, between 2017 and January this year, my business grew from 1 car to 5 cars. And it had even minibuses now. it looked good at first because, wow, it's growing, and people are saying congratulations. But what I didn't realize is that I was not growing strong. And in fact, I was exposing myself to more risk in that as soon as bad times hit, I've got 6 cars to think about. And what I should have instead done is made sure that before I go to car 4, car 1 is paid up. Before I go to car 5, car 2 is paid up. And that's how you grow strong and not necessarily just big. You make sure that you're strong in where you are centered first, so that growth is supported by something concrete. I made the mistake of I didn't do that. I rushed for growth, and of course banks are enticing me. I can get another car, getting excited. And when business started to dry up towards the end of last year, I had 5 vehicles parked not doing anything that needed to be paid for. And then what then happened? Then they got into an accident. Then 2 of my vehicles got into an accident, and the drivers were not in the conditions they were supposed to be. The banks and insurance refused to pay, and I found myself with a mounting debt. And it was very difficult for me to navigate that because I grew big and not strong. Had I paid up these 2 cars, those 2 cars would have helped me sort of make the money back. But now I found myself with 5 cars, 2 are not operating. I have to pay for them. 3 are sitting there. There's no real business. And I was losing a lot of money. I was bleeding cash. I decided to go back to corporate. I went back to corporate. I got myself a job. I was like, this is getting a bit difficult. And I rebuilt myself from there. I do agree that the system currently doesn't support, maybe even you can go as far as saying black entrepreneurs, but I don't think it's necessarily that it doesn't support black entrepreneurs, but the system doesn't support startups who don't have anything, because the system wants collateral. The system wants, how are you going to do this? What assets do you own? And it just so happens that in South Africa, coincidentally, the people that are the poorest are black. So it then coincides. A lot of white people also, when they apply, they do get asked those questions, but they've got a dad who can then give them an asset to use as collateral, or a dad who was a company who can write a letter to say that we are backing this company, or give them a letter of intent. So that's the difference they have. They have resources. So what should the government do? We really need to relook our criteria for giving finance. And I alluded to it earlier that currently banks fund on the strength of your balance sheet. So what does that mean? They look at what assets do you have. Do you have any physical assets that can be attached as collateral? If not, do you have any liquid assets? Is there people that owe you enough money that if they were to pay you, you would be able to pay off the debt that you're loaning? So the criteria in which is being used, I think for me, is completely flawed. It needs to be customized to South Africa, and I think we're currently missing that. We need to be able to consider the fact that SIPO, for argument's sake, is going to come from a rural town but has an idea that could change all of our lives. And unless we look at our criteria in such a way that allows him a chance, then we'll miss that entrepreneur. And I think currently we miss a lot of entrepreneurs because of that very fact. So I don't think the environment in South Africa is very conducive for the success of small entrepreneurs. To be honest with you, I think more can be done. And I think the first part is just access to finance. We need to relook how we decide who's going to get funding and who's not going to get